Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, returning guest, the lovely, the talented Jil Macdonald. How you doing, Jill?
I'm good. Hi, Tyler. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, my pleasure. I always enjoy our chats and always love the, hey, what are you up to? What are you up to now? And we were joking a little bit off air. You've been up to something new, but it's been 2 years. So maybe new for us chatting, but you are the COO at Walnut Insurance. And I'm going to do my classic. What is a walnut? let us into the tent. What are you guys all about? And then let's have a technology conversation, an insurance conversation, all the fun stuff.
Yeah. What is a walnut? You know, it's funny. We get a lot of questions like, why walnut? What's that name? And to be so honest and frank, the company wasn't chosen necessarily for the name, but the name was uniquely where it was a name individuals knew, something that was common, something that was easy to spell and was used in that way. And I think nothing maybe more special per se, but what Walnut is we're an embedded insurance enabler. What that means is through technology, we connect with leading insurance carriers across North America, and we work specifically with brands, whether that are telco, retail institutions, financial institutions, challenger banks, you name it, to really see how we distribute and embed insurance in the way they're already engaging with their customer. I think we all know we have to source insurance because there's a regulatory requirement, specifically in Canada, on so many products. But retelling your story, having to go self-source that is a challenge. And so what we'd love to do is, how do you present something? So say you're getting a loan. How do you have coverage, or what we'll call creditor debt protection insurance, against that loan in a single checkbox? You don't now need to go and fill out that form that many maybe are so used to if, say, you were getting a mortgage. There's this home insurance that comes along, home insurance, credit insurance, or mortgage protection insurance that comes alongside it. It's a separate form. Your name isn't even filled in that form. It's kind of feels like a completely separate, disjointed process. And
it sometimes gives you a what the hell is this? What the hell is this moment, right? It causes you sometimes as a consumer to pause. It does.
You have all my information. Why are you making me do this? Why did you give me a paper form when I filled something out online? It has a different company name.
I'm adding friction, and I'm potentially pissing off my client. That's not a good formula. None of us want that. We don't want that.
Exactly. So we can take the idea of that form and make it a checkbox in the digital way you're already engaging that consumer. Or if you're in a one-to-one relationship, create that into a checkbox, automatic. I think the idea is to enable opportunities for insurance to be presented better, easier, and faster for the customer to secure, if it's something that they require and or desire.
Is this a little bit twofold? You mentioned the word regulatory, like in certain instances, there needs to be insurance presented. It needs to be part of it. Also, I'm thinking about these large brands going, I have the trust, I have these relationships, I quote unquote have this database. I want to sell, I want to provide auxiliary services. I want to provide other things that are maybe outside of my core comp. Is it a little bit of both? Is it I want to sell this product, but also in some places I'm being forced to, and wow, it's been cumbersome. This is going to make it easy. Is it a bit of both sides of that coin?
Absolutely both sides. Okay. I think when you start to think about specifically things like mortgages, many financial institutions offer mortgages. Today we work with Neo, for example. Neo Financial offers mortgages today. And for you to actually be able to secure that debt and financing, you have to be able to present home insurance. And so in that process, not only does the financial institution require that you present something, you need to do that as well. So why not within that process, as they're presenting you with what your rate looks like, can also present you alongside different home insurance quotes and opportunities. If, of course, you select in that you'd like that. Of course, it's not going to be presented to you without consent and without desire and things like that. But why not do that alongside that process? So you're not disjoining it, and then you're needing to go self-serve in the market when something that could be presented to you with potentially even a better rate than what you could get on your own.
So if I'm in that scenario and I'm at Neo and I'm doing my mortgage, and do I even see Walnut, or do I see the actual, because you're the intermediary behind the actual insurance provider? And are you, I don't want to use the word white label because I think it's oversimplified, but does Walnut ever show up in that transaction, or are you the gears behind the wall that I can't see?
Awesome question. I'd say sometimes you'll see Walnut, sometimes you won't. And there's two reasons for that. One is either the partner makes a decision around that. So, for example, we work with TELUS and offer travel insurance, and we have TELUS travel insurance powered by Walnut. That was their choice. But also, inside of some insurance products, you do have to make sure you're licensed to distribute the product.
Okay.
Therefore, Walnut is the licensed entity in this case.
So are you then like are you a broker?
We are a broker, yes. So
okay, so that would be like, I think about, I deal with such and such insurance brokerage, and I'm getting my insurance from Intact or from Aviva or from whoever the case
absolutely
may be, right? Yeah, okay.
So we do
not just
like,
to oversimplify, but very much traditional in that way. But we're going to get into how you do it from a technology perspective, which I think is the wow factor, right, or is the differentiator.
Absolutely. So I think your brokerage, everyone's so familiar with it, but that's where we almost lead that we're a tech company, because if you start to think of Walnut simply as a brokerage, it may not do justice to the way that we operate.
And that model's, clearly you guys are looking to do something different and better. So that's a model that's been there. Hey, when is the rest of the world going to get on board? Like, we made some jokes offline. I talked to lots of industries that as a customer, I have such an expectation that you're adapting technology at the same speed I am everywhere else in my life. Insurance maybe wasn't always put in that bucket.
I couldn't agree more.
Hence, I think maybe why you saw the opportunity to go there 2 years ago to make some change.
I think absolutely. I think I made the change because I love learning new sectors. I love putting myself into challenges in terms of enabling my own personal growth. But as you think about insurance, and I think it's so well known in the market that insurance is lagging behind. It's been lagging behind the financial sector as it relates to technology and innovation for a while. I do feel like, and I see it, that they are leaning heavily into technology, both when you think about large carriers in terms of how they're leveraging technology internally. There's changing in terms of direct-to-consumer marketing. You are seeing shifts on kind of consumer experience for sure, but I would agree it has lagged. But that opens the opportunity for companies like Walnut, where there is this great piece on how we embed. How do we create the opportunity that we can present this insurance opportunity to you where you're already inside, whether you're obtaining a loan, whether you're traveling across the border, whether you're getting energy services. How do you get it presented to you seamlessly from that brand? And that's where I think the opportunity is, and it's a win for everybody. The consumer is provided with a product that may enable them to get it faster, cheaper, better. A brand is able to offer an ancillary product to that consumer and keep that consumer connected to them. And the insurance companies are then getting augmented distribution as well.
Now, in a way that would be probably challenging, back to core competencies. And these insurance institutions are they're old, they've been around, they're deep. It's not a fast moving speedboat. Let's put it that way. Curious a second, we'll circle back to the industry and kind of what the work you're doing, but talk to me a little bit about even just as a career professional, for people listening going, wow, you left to go to a completely new industry. You like, I love challenging myself, and I know you a little bit, so I know that's a bit of your DNA. But when you went from the AER, you were AltaML, technology always the underpinning of kind of the version of you that I know. But that willingness and just talk to me about a little bit of the excitement and how you balance that against the trepidation of like, whoa, I am a bit over my head. I thought I maybe knew more about insurance than I do, and just playing around with just the human experience of that pivot.
Yeah. So I'd say it's interesting. Like I'll go back when I was in a regulatory world, and you're right. Digital technology innovation have always been at the core of where I focus, regardless of the sector. Moving from like a highly regulated sector where we're working to develop AI solutions to an AI dedicated organization that's focusing on building AI products and solutions across so many sectors, from health to financial services to energy predominantly, and then moving that into insurance technology. I think for me, where and why I make the shift is I want to make sure personally I am as well-rounded and as well-versed technically as I can be. And so my shifts have been either I want to get more deep, for example, into AI. I was already leading teams and building AI solutions inside of government agencies, but let's really start to lean into that more. Let's get fully deeper, and so I can understand how those are really done, get more exposure, and then moving into insurance technology was maybe a little bit less on the insurance, for example, but more on, I really want to make sure I'm hardening my understanding and my capabilities around the front and back end of technology building that's going to wrap around, say, AI solutions or other products and technology. And I think insurance was ripe for change. And I love being in spaces that are ripe for change. And so that married really well. But I find that I get bored, and it's fascinating. I'll say talk to my parents and they'll be dumbfounded on it and say, like, I don't know why you do this to yourself. I don't know why you make these changes. It's so stressful when they think about it. And for me, I actually get really bored, and then I either start to see, how do I create my own company? I start to create my
The
own
wheel
things.
starts to turn. Yeah, I get
I
it.
lean
Yeah.
into more board work, or I lean into other things because I need to create an energy there of learning and growing. And so sometimes I just do that with a career change because it gives me the ability to fulfill that desire.
Well, you can entrepreneurial energy, angst. Just the moss doesn't grow in a row. There's so many jokes you can make about it, but I love what I really appreciate is that's just self-awareness to go, yep, I get it. Oh, there it is. It's starting to show up again. Okay, I need to start looking around and how important that is in the world we live in. And there's so many opportunities to not get stale. The only reason to get stale is if you let it happen. I think there's so much
Absolutely.
going on out there. It's so exciting.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that for myself subconsciously, I just can't do. I can't let myself get stale. I don't want to. And so it's always looking at how do I improve and learn. So where you might go take a lot of courses, which I still do, or you go do certifications, micro certifications, I love to marry that with let's put myself in a new challenge. So I'm going to have to accelerate.
There is no
that
better
and
way to
learning
learn
it.
in my, I'm like, yeah, okay, this is the deep end. All right, I'm going to step into it for sure. Perspective on something I just heard was the subject matter expertise of the insurance industry. There's people you can probably talk to that it could they've forgotten more than you've ever known about, or you and I've ever known about insurance, just for a joke. Then there's the technology experts, the marrying of the two. And I've seen startups, or I've had conversations where sometimes it was technology running around looking for a subject matter to fix, or I've seen subject matter experts that just didn't even know the art of the possible when it came to, we'll just pick on AI. Talk to me a little bit about, because it feels like you've played that balance of like, yeah, I really understand the technology and I went all in. Now I'm going to come and learn how to apply it to this industry, which maybe I don't know as much about, but I'm going to learn. And I've got this technology filter to bring. That's where I see some industries struggle, where you've got that deep expertise that struggle to get the tech, or the tech running around jumping into industries that they don't really understand the subject matter. And each one can be problematic. Thoughts, perspectives, kind of what your view is around that.
Yeah, no, I think that's very valid. And you see that risk and challenge with many startups. I'd say the interesting thing here is when I look at our leadership team, there's two other individuals alongside me, Derek Setso and Adrian Nieblock. Derek and Adrian both bring a really diverse background in terms of growing and scaling tech companies alongside being in large financial institutions. Derek also is an insurance broker behind the scenes as well. And so there's a merriment of insurance understanding alongside technical competency in building and growing companies. And so I think that merriment has come to bear very well. And I think that's where we've maybe overcome that challenge that you mentioned, is the diversity of background. I'd say I came in without the knowledge around insurance. I'd say I had small, minute pieces of insurance understanding, probably more from my own personal experience
Which
with
I
the
think
products and
many of us do,
solutions.
whether we like it begrudgingly or otherwise, right?
Absolutely. But I think an understanding of financial institutions, an understanding of large enterprise. And so it's really about how does insurance act as a complementary product to some of these large enterprise brands, as we are inherently working with insurance carriers, but they're not first and foremost our customer per se. Our
Okay.
customers are
They're kind of one of your provider.
their provider.
They're a provider, a stakeholder.
Absolutely. At times we do work with them to digitize and optimize their products and solutions, and we absolutely have. We've worked with National Bank Insurance to do just that, and others to transform the product so we can embed and work in a different way. And so we do get opportunity to, and we do love to work with the insurance carriers, but also it's about creating distribution for everyone and opening up a new market for products for others. And so it's like you're at this space around insurance, you need to understand it very well inherently. You need to know the regulations and the Bank Act specifically, and understand how it can be distributed or not distributed. But it's very much about educating and working with other brands outside of insurance to offer insurance.
That makes sense of like how it gets to the customer and ultimately makes their life easier, better, and with less friction. Ballpark, and maybe I'm asking too prescriptive of a question. I can only imagine there's a significant onboarding from the first time the phone rings with a potential their brand. They want to offer this. They're already offering it maybe in a paper format. I'm assuming there's a significant, you got to map out the journey, understand their customer, understand their goals. I'm guessing it's a fairly significant undertaking when you engage. This isn't a spin it up and get it live in days.
You know what? I'd say we're getting there on the spin it up, get it live.
Okay, nice. Okay, good. All right, I love it.
We can deploy in one day, but I'd say to be honest, the deployment is typically the faster process. I think when you think about the sales conversation or to getting to that point, it is, and uniquely, as you outlined, that customer experience and the journey of the customer is so critical. How and when insurance is presented to make sure that it's not taking away from the core reason that customer is engaging with you. Yeah. If it is to source a loan, say a micro loan or an auto loan, for example, we want to make sure that we are in no way putting a roadblock inside of the reason that you're engaging that customer, which is, of course, inherent and important for that brand. So it's about understanding that journey, understanding the technology that you're using and the way that you're engaging that customer. And then how and when we present insurance or the partner presents insurance. So it's the right moment, the right time that leads to not only conversion on the original product, but also conversion on the insurance product. And so that's where I think the uniqueness happens. It's maybe not necessarily on the product itself, but it is when, where, how. What does it look like? And we spend lots of time designing that, building those screen imagery and building that design early.
Well, the customer experience is the make or break in that moment. Right?
It's critical.
The product could be nothing new, nothing exciting, just exactly what it needs to be. But the how it gets delivered and how seamless I feel it as a customer, that doesn't disrupt the other, because you don't want to try to sell one and disrupt the other.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be successful.
The risk of it didn't add, but it actually maybe took away. Like that's non-negotiable in my mind.
Absolutely critical, non-negotiable. Our goal is to augment. Absolutely. And so we spend a lot of time designing the imagery and really walking through customer experience and making sure
the psychology of that is paramount, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And do you typically launch with a pilot? I'm assuming there's probably a pretty deliberate test and learn phase for everybody to get comfortable.
Absolutely. We like to look at either a subsegment of the customer audience, or we like to look at singular products. So there's some partners, COO, for example, where we started with one product and we continue to grow as it relates to different products. We'd love to either start with one product or start with one product in a subsegment of the audience. It really depends on how it's going to be marketed as well. Is it something that you want to direct line market more broadly? That's where you maybe don't want a subsegment because it's a little bit depending on how you're going to top line market it or not. So those little things matter. And I think that's where the minutia gets to, is really as you get into that detail in terms of really trying to make that effective program together.
I'm curious your lessons learned or point of view, and obviously speaking very broadly, but knowing your experience and your background, talk to me a little bit about like what sets a company up, whether a large brand like these, the transformation aspect, the change management of this is a new offering, this is a new way of doing things. Thoughts on maybe, and this is a culmination of your career, things you've seen that really have set companies up for success, and maybe the opposite. Where do organizations often fail? Like, yeah, we've got this great initiative, and it just doesn't get across the line, or the team doesn't adopt it, or it doesn't get rolled out properly. Any kind of key lessons you might want to share from the good column and the don't do that column?
Yeah, I'd say a couple. They're probably blended together, but I think
one might be the opposite of the other.
Yeah, you need to be able to demonstrate and show, whether that's an end user or decision maker, but probably both, what it's going to look and feel like. So they need to feel that. They need to see it. They need to understand, what is that changing the way and how we do business, or not at all, or maybe minutely. And then additionally, I think the biggest is you always have to involve a decision maker and the individual that has the authority. I think a lot of times you get maybe stuck with the individual that's responsible to, say, implement, that has that technical understanding, but maybe they're not the signatory. Maybe they're not the official decision maker. And you have to build those relationships through trust and through, I believe, integrity and honesty. It's not always about a sales conversation if you're trying to do something new. I think doing something new, even if you're building internally, and I've spent many years doing that, you have to do it from the view of this is going to make that individual, that company, there are stakeholders, it's going to make an outcome better. And you have to sell that to the individuals that need to implement it. But you have to sell it in a way that is honest and transparent. And
if not, the truth tends to come out very quickly, right? The truth shows up pretty quick if it's not.
And you have to build a relationship of trust with them. And I think that that's really important. And at times we forget that. It isn't just like, go and do this. This is what you need to do. It's so much better. Absolutely. Or implement this AI technology. It's going to make XYZ better. You're going to save this much money. Absolutely, that's possible. But if you don't do it the right way, it's never going to get to the outcome it needs. And therefore, you have to figure out how to work with people and tools in a way that they can integrate and adopt.
And is that also a risk of just such, change fatigue that things get relegated down? Like, I'm a senior leader. I've got 30 things I'm trying to change. Okay, you're going to handle that. And then I get disconnected and it doesn't have that champion or doesn't have that kind of senior level advocacy that it might need. But I also giving everybody credit for the fact that that's not the only thing that's on everyone's plate, right? There's probably too many things, I'm going to boldly say.
Yeah, I think in that example, staying duly connected. So as it gets passed down, there's reasons for that. And staying connected to the individual does and working through that, but also maintaining that connection and relationship with the individual that originally maybe made that decision to pass it down is critical. So it's maintaining that duality and that conversation of duality inside of that implementation, inside of
and
that
appreciating
sale.
that there are different levels of conversation too, right?
Absolutely. And there shouldn't be singular. And I think that that's where always the reflection back, both personally and when you see maybe those challenges, is you didn't have that duality of conversations or the multiple of conversations.
In the lessons learned debrief, you're like, there was a gap there, right?
Yeah.
So for you, I can only imagine that customer success, if that's what you guys call it, customer success, is so critical, and the right layers are having the right conversations. And some conversations might be daily, some might be weekly or monthly, but they still have to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it needs to be a different person too.
Yeah.
And that's a piece as well that I think you have to be honest about injecting if necessary in a way that honors everyone's dialogues and relationships.
And for you guys as an organization, so I'm getting into the secret sauce here, so you can tell me to stop asking anytime. I'm assuming you build very clients, like this is the TELUS team, this is the NEO team, that there's very specific, I'm thinking even our world, there's an account director, account manager, someone kind of has a high level and has the C-seat, the sweet seat chat, but there's still the individuals that quote unquote got to get shit done on a Tuesday, and they're in the weeds of actually working. That's got to be so critical, especially with these large brands that they themselves sometimes lose track of the left hand and the right hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those teams, and I think even at Walnut, we're constantly shifting in terms of it relates to we're be very nimble on number of resources. So we're always trying to be really effective with who and how we use that. But there are multiple people always.
How old is Walnut? I didn't ask you. You've been there for 2 years. That was my main curiosity. But how long has Walnut been around?
I'd say Walnut just around 4 years.
Okay, also relatively new in the world. I don't know. When are you not a startup? When are you a startup? That's an elusive topic in my mind.
Yeah,
it's often a mindset more than anything else, and a level of stability or not, right?
Absolutely. So it's still very, very new in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. Absolutely.
And what's your team coefficient look like? Is big team, small team, some remote, people all over the place? I'm always curious. There's no one formula anymore, especially with tech companies of quote unquote how to do it.
So I'd say Walnut is 100% remote. We were always been remote first. So if we look back 4 years, would have been COVID timing. So
just
Walnut,
before it became cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or however you want to talk about that one, as everyone forces return to office, which is a whole other podcast we could do.
And a deliberateness. I think we have a deliberateness to be remote first that isn't just because of how Walnut was started or the timing. We have team members that span all across Canada, many in British Columbia, all the way through to New Brunswick. Multiple languages, of course, that we need to support. We need different legislation. You need different licensing. So we need to support that as we look at national programs. And so For us, we are 100% remote. I and others do lots in person as well, though. I think relationships in person are so critically important,
Agreed.
both for your team members, but also the partners that you work with. That's so critical. So there's many that do lots in person or travel. But I'd
Mhm.
say our team is 100% remote. So we've got a lot of Slack messages going every day, lots of Slack
My
channels.
Slack is going off on my other screen while I'm talking to you. It's closed, but I know it's going off right
Oh,
now.
yes. I closed
Yeah,
mine and be the
yeah,
same way.
we are very similar. We're full remote and the flexibility, but there's a discipline and then there's requirements. Like it's a privilege and you need to respond accordingly. Like there's no such thing as over communicating. I don't think with remote, but that's another,
I, I would
that's another
I would
conversation we can have.
communicate, and you need to document quite a bit more. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
also we find bring others in for collaboration, for understanding, things like that. And it's a type of individual that works well and thrives in remote,
100%.
and others it's just not suitable, and that's okay. And I think that that's an important piece as we hire is making sure that fit is there,
Agree.
because it isn't for everyone being in a fully remote space.
I could not agree more. We've learned, everyone's like, oh, it's remote. You just shut your office down. I'm like, oh, no, no. You think about your business completely differently. And, the individuals that love it are also often willing to do those few extras because they also, the value to them is so high. And I think
Mhm.
lately it's become a differentiator for hiring as everybody's trying to suck you back to the office kicking and screaming a little bit.
I find our tech teams that's a strength for them. I
Yeah.
think when you think about individuals that need to be that hands-on keyboard time, I think they very much value it. You can enable or kind of create that mode if you need in terms of having that heads down work time, which is
Versus an
really
office full of
important.
devs with headphones on, trying not to disturb each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think when I was in a kind of hybrid and office environment and I think of timing and you've got AI developers and others and their biggest question was like, can you please be quiet? Like when you think about sales professionals or you other teams
The
and
opposite of
yeah,
quiet, usually. The opposite of quiet.
yeah, it's for sure. So I think in that way, if
Mm,
as long as it matches with the way you thrive to work,
yeah.
it's a really good fit.
Yeah, again, there is no universal. This is the answer. That's the answer. You got to be deliberate about it. And talk to me. Let's get into the technology lore a little bit. I'm reading what AI will become part of the claims process. Mobile, IoT, like it's a little bit of one of your posts. Has got the. What are you seeing technology wise in terms of like where's the rubber's hitting the road? AI is a nice broad one because you can't shake a stick without getting hit by that acronym right now and all the things that it means. But as a technology person at your core, what are you seeing that's getting you excited in how it's actually starting to show up in the real world? Mobile, IoT, AI, those types of things. But what is that day-to-day use case that's starting to really go, wow, that is absolutely delivering value to the company and a better experience to the customer?
Great question. I'd say from a walnut sense, I think the underpinning technology is actually the fact that you don't, as a consumer, you do nothing more or nothing different. So it's
Mm.
actually not about seeing something or having this additive, it's that something is just presented to you or
It's
something is
about
that
actually not having to see it.
completed on your behalf.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
I like that a
that's
lot.
where I actually think is this powerful piece. Of course, that's you've given consent, you've shown intent, like of course all those things are going through, but
Yes.
I think that it's presented to you when you think of the Amazon technology in terms of the fact that that's changed the game as it relates to how people are purchasing, how you're
Yes.
shipping, the identification of where they're moving towards and telling you that you need this product or just going to officially send it to you. I think some of those things are what I think is really interesting and unique. If I went down the AI rabbit hole, I think the fact is we all know and we've always known for a while that AI is surrounding everything that you do. And I think now everyone is a lot more versed in the fact that that is true as it relates to every technology, whether you pick up your phone and every app and solution that you're looking at, or the health data it's telling you, or anything like that. But I think for me, it's more about how does it create it easier and better for you to do your daily
Mm.
work.
Mm.
I don't know if I have one like true core tool or solution there that is kind of the biggest, but I think what's I'm watching is, interestingly enough, is just the financial institution conversations when you start to look at the blockchain and crypto and how that
Yeah.
is leaning in a lot more. And of course, that has been growing, but I think a really more top of mind conversation, and how is blockchain really going to maybe be more embedded in
Hmm.
different sectors and spaces than maybe we've seen. That's one that's, interestingly enough, on my mind in terms of from a ledger perspective and things like that, that I really am eager to see. But I also think just the currency shift that we're looking at, and the digital, your digital wallet, your digital identity, that whole shift is here and already present. And I think just hasn't been maybe at the forefront. And that's one that I'm watching, absolutely, I think, in both personal and professional, because it will change the way you're engaging with your financial institution, way you're engaging with agencies, way you're engaging and needing to present information. And so that's one that's really on my radar right now.
I like that you brought up blockchain because it, like anything in technology, you hear about it for a bit, and then it, the promise and the praise, and then it kind of dwindles, and it goes through those cycles, and the disillusionment phase, but that one's always been interesting to me because on paper, I'm like, that sounds like it could solve and be brilliant in so many ways, but yet I just haven't seen it always or get across the line yet. So I'm glad that you brought that up because it's certainly not getting the shiny spotlight. But when you understand it that first time, you're like, oh wow, this could impact this. Like it's easy even as a layman to kind of jump to where you see that value potentially showing up for blockchain in my mind.
Yeah. And I feel it's quite similar to what you were just saying. But I just feel that that we're going to see through this year more of it. And
Okay.
I feel that it's actually going to be spurred because of the financial elements and changing and looking at some of that's going to maybe spur, because we're using that type of technology as we start to think about digital currencies a bit differently.
That aren't going away like some would wish and some would wish not.
I think not going away.
No, I think that they're clearly not going away.
No, I would agree, and definitely not going away. And I think that those that have taken advantage of them early and continue to have already shown
Yeah.
multiplier benefits.
Walnut digital first. I don't know if that's even still the right term to use. You're working with brands that have been around for a long time, and oftentimes there's legacy, a financial sector that you can't be and maybe insurance. There's so much legacy, so much tech debt and band-aided together solutions, and it's a big deal for them to make a move. How's that balance between, I guess, what you're seeing with even being with a TELUS or a Neo, obviously a tech-enabled and a disruptor bank from that perspective, and also Walnut being, you started with the technology bent. You started because of and to enable. How's that relationship, or maybe what are you seeing when those conversations you're having with some of those bigger brands that have so much legacy, but are they crystal clear that they need to quote unquote be better and change? And then what's that relationship between the speed it takes them to get there? Just because we got so much in place that is the other way, versus Walnut's been starting with a clean slate right from the get-go 4 years ago.
Yeah, you know what? It's that actually when we talk to large enterprises and we say, okay, well, we could launch this in 30 days.
Whoa, take it easy.
Yes. Oh, okay, great. But the answer's like, oh, that's awesome. Like, that's not us.
Yeah.
And so that
exactly what I was getting at. Thank you for summing it up nicely.
I'd say as we're having conversations and you think about many of the larger financial institutions, the larger insurance companies here in Canada, there is absolutely always underpinning the conversation a desire for change, a desire to see. And if we think about what we'll call embedded insurance, which is presenting insurance at that moment of time a consumer needs it without retelling a story, that conversation is there. That desire is there. And many are on a path to get there. And that's where we have come in a conversation, which is like, from a carrier, how do we help you get there? Or what insight can we provide? But it is a longer tail. It's like, well, we're looking at that for the end of 25, or it's on our 26 roadmap, where we have to foundationally do an ERP system change, or we're underway as it relates
Once we do this and get this together, then we'll do that kind of mindset,
and
right?
So I think that there's foundational challenges that they have to undergo to potentially even say, look at their CRM system or other things like that maybe need to be done in advance. And so it's this conversation that I believe they'll get there, but it's the timing. It does take longer. But it's out there and it's aware. I'd say that's the piece there. It's just a longer tail. as it relates to
Okay,
that. And so
I appreciate that. We're excited, but first we got to clean up the sandbox first. It sounds like you're industry agnostic. You could be over here working with, an airport facility. You could be working like all over the place. Do you see some consistency? I always feel, sometimes you talk to clients, like, I need to know you have exact experience in my sector. I'm like, yes. And this is what we've learned from all the other sectors that you can learn from as well. Talk to me a little bit about that balance of being able to have, I think maybe that 30,000 foot view while simultaneously being able to go down to boots on the ground.
Yeah, I'd say, although industry agnostic, I'd say we spend a majority of our time in the financial sector. Many of our partners are financial institutions, challenger banks, neobanks. You've got loan issuers, different parties that play inside that space, or collections companies, I think. So different things where they are touching that world. So everyone that would be considered fintech, I'd say that's probably the bulk of the partners we work with. So we spend a lot of time making sure we understand the legislation around that sector, and how to operate and work with each different subsegment of that. But I think we do work on direct-to-consumer energy companies. Of course, you're with ATCO in Alberta locally, and then telco or retail, Tim Hortons, for example, working with them. But we're also on the Tim's financial side. So it is of course, we offer.
So there is a bit of there's a theme.
Coverages. It's a theme. Really, the financial aspect of many of the companies is really inside that space. So I'd say predominantly financial is where we play the most, but we do see, of course, other companies that insurance can be such an ancillary. You see it in travel quite a bit, ancillary to airlines. It's always been so connected there.
I just bought this, so therefore now I need to consider this as well. Yeah.
And
how do I make that show up seamlessly? Not like a what? Like an after. Like the upsell at the car dealer.
Absolutely.
We all know what bad feels like.
Yeah.
And how much do you deal with differences, Alberta, BC, Quebec, Ontario, in terms of just what happens on a provincial level?
At a provincial level is very, very different on insurance.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that before. I've heard that from other people. Like, it's way more. Don't take it for granted. It's more different than you think.
Very different behind the scenes, and so. And specifically too, when you start to look at Quebec as well, and French, Quebec has its own completely different.
Yes. I grew up in Quebec. Quebec is different on every front, and they like to be different as well. Also,
and so I'd say we behind the scenes are individually licensed in each province. As you look at each product, there's unique elements for each one, depending on where that customer resides, from how it's presented to what disclosures need to occur to what consent needs to happen. So a lot of those things behind the scenes go on, and you need to understand. So you need to understand both provincial legislation, but also federal legislation as well.
Well, and you're dealing with a lot of these brands you're talking about. They're also national. So they also have their own ways of doing things and different teams in every market. So there's a lot of, the puzzle pieces need to be probably recut every once in a while to go, okay, you're here, you're there. But there's got to be some learning. Every year, I'm assuming you're getting smarter than you were the year before when it comes to what happens province to province.
For sure. And I'd say we actually were cautious in terms of entering Quebec. So even in partners that we look, that many are national organizations, we started with all, let's say, English-speaking provinces first, and then moved into Quebec because there were additional requirements, complete changes on the way the consumer experience needed to be, how it was presented, the way emails went out, what was disclosed. And so it was additional build both for us and our partners. So we've been deliberate in making sure we do that the right way. And so it's stepwise as it related to different provinces and jurisdictions. And I think that's been our learning over last year, was to really enter Quebec effectively. So we spend a lot of time in that space. I'd say I was writing emails in French yesterday and really trying to work on that. I know in Alberta, French is maybe not a predominant language, but we do a lot in Quebec.
And Quebec French is Quebec. Alberta French is Alberta French. Quebec French is Quebec French. There are some nuances.
Absolutely.
We do a lot of work. Our largest client being Honda. We do a lot of work in Quebec. It's one of their largest markets for sales. And we have translators that are in market and industry specific, because the nuance, and especially with advertising, when you've got wit or humor, ooh, you got to be really careful with your language.
Absolutely. Google
And at the most
Translate
surface level, if the
complicated.
customer doesn't believe you're integral and part of their community, you're not even going to get to the next phase of the journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's where I think it's just so important
Yeah.
to know that audience, and as you go back to it is national brands are wonderful to work with, but you do have to do a stepwise approach.
And I'm assuming that's also probably very well known. So, what's your experience in Quebec? I'm assuming that is part of that. Very quickly in that early conversation with national brands.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the technology. I've got you, so I don't want to miss these opportunities. What and maybe this is an extreme way to ask it. So, what does keep you up at night? Is general intelligence with AI? Is it the speed? Is it anything that, as someone who's been versed and spent a lot of time in technology, there's always the doom and gloom. So I'm not really asking that, but at the same time, a little bit like what is of concern for you, or what's maybe on if something was going to keep you up technology wise? Is there anything that's percolating around that you'd want to share, just for the sake of the chat?
Yeah, I'd say whenever I think keeping up at night, typically I go to that doom and gloom. But I'd say I think there is a big piece around AI, and I think what keeps me up at night is both personal and professional is how am I interacting with AI solutions that I don't know, and on a personal
Mm.
side. That's one thing that comes in my mind. What AI products and solutions am I interacting with that I don't know, and how am I making sure I'm protecting my data in a way that I feel comfortable and I've given authority on? So that's my personal piece. I'd say anyone in my personal sector always says I feel like sometimes I'm like a CISO officer in my social group, always saying like, what are you doing from VPNs to understanding your data on the internet and all those different things. And so I
That
always
can
have
be very overwhelming for the average. The
it can
average
be.
among us that aren't maybe considered ourselves tech savvy, just getting into VP, just getting into the surface level. You read some of the doom and gloom books around like what's happening to your data. It gets really overwhelming really quickly.
It does. And so that's where I think, and say you download a new app and you don't look at the disclosures around it's going to have access to XYZ, and you just say, yes, okay, or access. And paying attention to those, I think, is important. When I think of kind of corporately, for us, what keeps me up at night is we're entering the United States more intimately, which is great.
Oh, okay, cool. I was going to ask that.
Fantastic.
I was going to ask that question about John. Okay,
We
cool.
we are we have been very Canadian focused, and we will continue to be. But there's distinct products and solutions that we see a great opportunity and a draw into the United States, and so that's one. And also, I think what we're also going through is how and where are we deploying AI internally that's going to augment our own operations, but also external customer experience in a way that's going to honor what the way we've operated to date. And so that's actually an active one where we're exploring solutions internally. I don't have a tool yet on a variety. We're kind of looking and exploring and understanding, but how do we optimize our operations so we can continue to be lean? And as a startup, you want to be fiscally responsible. And I think that's critical for us is how do we use technology to make sure that the capital we've raised is being most effectively deployed? And that's important for us growing. So we're exploring that in tandem to entering a new market.
Just two little things at the same time.
Yeah.
Where are you on your journey as a business? Like, I don't know anything about you guys from a funding perspective or anything. I didn't end up down that rabbit hole. I was more focused on you, but I'm really curious on the business. Like, where are you guys in terms of rounds of funding, and what's that look like, or what do you want? What are you comfortable disclosing?
Yeah, and there's, I believe, tons of information out in the market. So we did do, I'd say, a small raise in April of last year.
Yep.
Whether you want to call that a Series A, you want to call that a kind of bridge piece, everyone could determine the way they want to term it.
I found that to be very much so with
we were
those terms.
purposeful not terming it
Okay.
because we didn't need it or want it to define as for.
Well, because it implies other things, right? That might not be true.
Yeah. But I think for us, that was fantastic in terms of raising that. We did get funding from many strategics. So our investors
that makes
today
sense.
are National Bank Ventures, TELUS Ventures, ATB Financial and their venture team. We have a diagram and portage or Sagard, otherwise known as well. And so just some stronger names and more strategic investors than maybe you would see traditionally across as well. So that's been really wonderful. Many were actual commercial partners first, and then we moved into investment second. But so that's one that we want to make sure we're deploying the capital that they provided us effectively. And that's one that we're always watching burn. And we're probably leaner than many purposely.
Any challenges, and this is where I don't want to speak, where nobody wants to speak out of turn. Having those partners that were venture partners first, or so the commercial partners first, that then became invested and maybe now have a seat at the table and have more say. How do you balance the challenges of that too? Like, you're a partner, but also now you're an investor. And yes, we have shared goals, but you have your agenda, we have ours, we have other competitors in the space. Is that a bit of a balancing act? I'm assuming, depending on the partner or the investor.
Balancing act. And also, how do you work with that venture team to support you in commercial growth inside that company? So if you see additional opportunities and you're trying to navigate a large organization, can you leverage that internal venture team or not? And that's, I think, something that's really important to understand how that venture team works within the business. Are they there to support growth in terms of, we want to grow our commercial relationship, or we want to keep that completely separate? We want to keep our investment and commercial separate, and each operates so differently. And so you need to understand the way that
what's their philosophy?
And how, what's their mandate? Is their mandate to find organizations where investing in and alongside commercial is actually going to benefit that parent company both ways? And you want that commercial relationship because it's filling a need or a void internally. Or sometimes it's simply pure investment from a capital perspective. And so knowing that is important.
The entrepreneur in me thinks it's the latter, thinks it's like, oh yeah, no, we're going to do this because it's going to benefit our business. But what's your mandate? What's their reason for being? And that can be very, alignment on early expectations on that one is critical.
Super critical. And so you need to understand that, and that gives you better understanding of how can you work with that venture team or not in a negative way, but that's not their mandate to support you, say, growing in terms of commercial contracts with that company. But it's interesting, at a board table, we've got a couple of observers, of course, and you're sharing, but you're not sharing as intimately, because
totally, that's a tricky balance. That can be really tricky.
Partners around the table, and so you're being transparent always, but it's kind of, you want to make sure you're not sharing proprietary information and things like that.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting. Yeah, it makes for interesting bedfellows. We'll just leave it at that. But strategically, far more benefit than risk, right?
Absolutely.
But I love what you said in the theme, eyes wide open, just to know what you're dealing with and how and what it actually means, and at the staying on top of that while things are also moving at 1,000 miles an hour, which I'm assuming things move pretty quickly in your world as well.
They do. I think what we're actually seeing is, how are we making sure we're focusing our team on the right things? Like, there's always glossy new things from, there's this really cool new type of product from an insurance perspective, no one's really offering it, or this, that, or like, we should go after this type of company. And I think for us, and what we'll spend the early stage of 25 is really tightening to, here's where we think the core is right now. Here's where our focus is. And like, these are fantastic ideas, but we need to be really laser focused on where we need to go. And then once we've been able to do that, now we can look at some of those kind of maybe different product solutions.
And does that actually get trickier? Because when you're super lean and you're new, you don't even have the bandwidth. So maybe there is more focus, or once you figure out and you get that fit and you know where you're headed, then all of a sudden you grow a little bit and you can do more, but you should be defined by what you don't do. Like, that feels like there's part of that journey of, I've heard it said before, there's certain points where you're defined much more quickly by what you say no to, not what you say yes to, but you can say yes. And there can be a bit of an addiction to saying yes.
Yeah. And I think that's where, if I look at 24, there, maybe we said yes too often, or we didn't say no fast enough, I'd actually even say. And so that's something that I think we're, and not negative, but we're now going to hone in more tightly.
I appreciate that. No, again, Jill, I always appreciate your honesty. It's not good or it's not bad, but we learned from this. We did a little too much of this and not enough of that, and we're going to do something different. But you're at that exciting phase, is as you get more capabilities and you've got bigger team and more ability, that saying no becomes even more critical.
Absolutely.
As we all, as you and I probably are both yes people. Yeah, sure. I want to get involved. Yes, I want to learn more. Yes, I want to challenge myself. Next thing you know, you're like, oh, who planned my schedule? Oh yeah, it was me. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jill, thanks for coming on. And then you always really appreciate one, your candor, your honesty, your willingness to chat. And as a fellow enthusiast for challenging myself, I really enjoy watching you put yourself in those positions and then thrive in them. And having got to know you over the past few years, watching you do that, and it's cool. I just give you a high five on that one. I love it.
Thanks, Tyler. Always appreciate the conversation. Always appreciate the thoughtful questions, kind of making me think here. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And if somebody wants to reach out, obviously, gowalnut.com. If you want to check it out, cracking the nut on insurance. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Love
I'm sorry.
Love it.
Apologize.
There's a marketing slogan right there.
Yeah, I don't want to say you use it, but my brain just couldn't help but say it. If someone wanted to reach out to you, is it LinkedIn? What's your favorite forum in the world of comms?
LinkedIn is always the best way. That's the best, easiest way. Absolutely. Feel free to, whether that's Walnut on LinkedIn or myself.
And Jill with one L. I want to be specific.
Jill with one L. You know what? If you search Jill with one L, I'll probably be one of the few and only people.
Yes, it's an excellent calling card. Jill with one L. Thank you very much again for taking the time, and congrats on your success with Walnut. It's great. I love it.
Thanks, Tyler.